In '94, I was introduced to Primus and Prodigy, so my whole landscape for bass kind of just opened up, so I bought a bass and then started fiddling around. Like, I was obsessed with Primus around that time, like, knew every lyric, every note of every single album, but I didn't care what label they were on or anything like that, you know? I think only once I started to get more involved in the kind of music world, like thinking of it kind of professionally, that I started to think about labels and that kind of stuff. Back then, it was kind of referenced as like a trip-hoppy kind of somewhat jazzy, avant-garde type stuff, you know? I think it's become such a collage now where it's just, it seems like everything's influencing everything else, you know? It really, I think whenever new sounds come like that, they open up doors that allows other genres to explore and that just weren't there before. Almost all the music I listen to, I don't listen to singles or anything like that. Like if you were to look at my music players, they I just always go through whole albums. I'm a huge fan of that. I feel like it's really easy to kind of coast along putting out singles and EPs because it kind of, there's not too much of a risk in that. And you can kind of generate hype around that, and it's really easy to kind of hop to the next sound doing that, as opposed to it being a solid body of work and like actually trying to say something with it, you know? You can say something with an EP, but it's definitely not as distinct and kind of thought out as you would do with an album. My first exposure to Ninja was probably around '96 or so. I remember seeing a Cold Cut video, the Timber track, where basically it was a collage of you know, sounds of chopping down forests and stuff mixed with the music of it, kind of showing what's happening to the rainforest and everything. And I remember just being really inspired by that. But at the time, I had no idea who they were or anything until much later, and then I was really influenced by the stuff that Amon Tobin was doing. He really kind of brought me into exploring more of what they're doing. I linked up with Ninja, I mean, essentially through working with Amon. We had met and then started talking more, and then we released a single on my label Ancestor. And at the time, I basically put this album together and was kind of shopping it out to a couple labels. I was trying to be very, very specific about who I might want to work with, and he introduced me to them and kind of encouraged them to snag me up, I think. And then just after chatting to them more and stuff, it just seemed like the right fit. They've been successful kind of breaking out of that realm just by honestly linking up with some really amazing artists and people that are doing just really interesting stuff. Like a good example would be Daedalus. You know, they've been working with him for a bit. He definitely has a huge jazz influence to a lot of his stuff, especially his more earlier stuff. But he's a good example of someone that's just taking it and completely turning it inside out, where it almost just feels like a natural progression of his own artistic sound and stuff. And I think that's happened with a few different artists on there, where they're all kind of just evolving in their own ways. And I think because Ninja's kind of open for that, it gradually just becomes this thing that has a life of its own. I intentionally didn't try to put out an album that sounded like the stuff, the singles and EPs I was doing just before that, because I wanted it to be a body of work in itself. You know, the next album I do for them, I want it to be its own individual piece as well. And I've always really loved the idea of specific sounds and specific kind of tones and imagery when bands put out distinct albums that really have their own kind of environment. I would say Ninja's lasting influence on electronic music in general, I think, would just be, I mean, they've been going for 20 years just with a massive catalog, and they've consistently the whole time pushed artists that were a bit kind of quirky. You know, they're kind of doing their own thing, and they really, really support that, and they really foster that. Like, now that I've gotten to work with them and stuff, I really see how they encourage artists to be individuals, and they're certainly not trying to push them in any kind of mold at all.